we're going to take the we're going to take b over 2, so that's 18 over 2, which is 9, and then we'll square that, and that's what we'll add to both sides. So I'll have x squared plus 18x plus the 9 squared, which is 81, and whatever I do to the left I have to do to the right to keep it an equation. So that gives me x squared plus 18x plus 81 equals 11. And then this factors nicely into x plus 9. That's why we do what we do up here, so that it will factor into that. Then we get the quantity of x plus 9 squared equals 11. Then we square root both sides. That gets rid of the square on the left, and we get positive or negative square root of 11 on the right. Can't break that down. It stays as it is. So to solve for x, we're going to subtract 9, and we're going to get x equals a negative 9 plus or minus radical 11. So the two solutions would be negative 9 minus radical 11 and negative 9 plus radical 11. Does that look good? Everybody agree on that? That's the first way. Then the other way that would also work would be to get that negative 70 over to the other side. So I'm going to add 70, and I'll have 0 on the right. I'm still looking at half of the b, which is 9 squared is 81. So this needs to be 81 in order for me to have that perfect square. So I could add 11 to it. And if I add 11 there, I've got to add 11 to the right side. So I get x squared plus 18x plus 81 equals 11. And I am right to this point. And everything after this will be the same as what we have here. It's just getting to that point that's a little different. Okay, and you would get the same answer. All right, so we're going to take a look at a couple of more problems, and then I'm going to turn you loose on an assignment for tomorrow over this. So the next problem I want you to write down. What was B? I think I may have written it down as this. It's this one, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you can go back to B, or you can write this. So let's put this as B. Yep. 2. Because I'm going to be working with a fraction, right? 5 over 2 is a fraction. I need to square that. It doesn't jive with me with the 28. So I'm going to go back to method 1. If you get method 2 and this is like, oh, I got that, Mrs. Stein, go for it, okay? I'm not going to say you can't do that, but this one lends itself easier to method 1. So that being said, I'm going to have to subtract 28 from both sides in order to get things set up so I can complete my square on the left. So that's going to give me y squared plus 5y, and I know I'm going to complete the square there. So I've got a negative 28 that I'm going to complete the square there for. Okay, so to complete the square, we take b and half of that. So b is 5, half of that's 5 over 2. I can't reduce that. Then I'm going to square that, and that's going to give me 25 over 4. That's what I'm going to put in those blanks, 25 over 4. And remember that half of b is what it will then factor into. So it will be y plus 5 halves squared equals, and you need to add negative 28 plus 25 fourths and leave it as a fraction, an improper fraction. So what is that going to be? And so that we will leave as an improper fraction, so negative 87 over 4. And now we're to the point where we're going to square root both sides to simplify or solve for y. So square root here, square root there. I'm going to get y plus 5/2 equals plus or minus. I'm going to get a step ahead, and I'm going to break this down as the square root of negative 87 over the square root of 4, because I know 4 breaks down to 2. 87 does not. So we're going to leave that as it is. So we are going to get y plus 5/2 equals positive or negative. Although that negative we can bring out as I, correct? So we'll have I radical 87 over 2. But we're not finished. So next step is I want to get y by itself, so I'm going to subtract 5/2. So I get y equals a negative 5/2 plus or minus I radical 87 over 2. And then we're ready to state our two solutions. We always do the subtraction first because subtracting, in my opinion, makes it a smaller value. Well, not just my opinion, it is. So that's going to give me negative 5/2 minus I radical 87 over 2 and negative 5/2 plus I radical 87 over 2. And this can actually be written another way, which is acceptable. They're both over 2, correct? So we could make it one fraction. Bless you. And write it this way. Both are correct. X squared, okay? Fortunately, there's a really simple way to get rid of that negative. We're going to multiply everything by -1, both sides. So it's going to look like this. I'm not going to do it with the original problem because I want you to remember what the original problem was. We're going to take everything times a -1. As long as we take both sides times a -1, we're fine. So in a sense, we could say we're either multiplying everything by -1 or we're moving all these terms to the other side of the equation. So we'd have 0 equals positive x squared plus 3x minus 9. But multiplying by a -1 gives us that. Okay, gonna have a fraction here. For me, that doesn't lend itself to the second way I showed you how you could complete the square to solve. So I'm going to add 9 over. Then I am going to figure out what b is. B is 3, so I'm going to take half of that. I can't simplify that any. And then I'm going to square that. And that's what's going to be added in each of those blanks to complete the square on the left. And whatever we do on the left, we have to do on the right also. So that's going to give me 9/4. So that's what I'm going to add here. So now my left is a perfectly squared trinomial, which will factor into x plus whatever b over 2 was, so 3/2 squared. And 9 times 9/4, 9 is the same as 36 over 4. So that's going to give me 45 over 4. Right? This is 9 over 1. And I'm going to make it to be over 4. So I have to take the denominator times 4. I'm taking the numerator times 4. Okay. Now we're ready to square root both sides. I get x plus 3/2 equals positive or negative. I'm going to break down the numerator and the denominator like that. And the numerator will break down, right? 45?
Yeah, I will.
5 times 9. 3 times 3. So a pair of 3's comes out. And 5 stays under. And then the square root of 4 is 2. Okay, so our last step then is to subtract that 3/2 over. So we get x equals negative 3/2 plus or minus 3 radical 5 over 2. And then break that down into your two solutions, negative 3/2 minus 3 radical 5 over 2 and negative 3/2 plus 3 radical 5 over 2. So today's problems focused on when we have fractions that we work with. And of course we could rewrite these as one fraction. I'm not going to put that. Just know that that could happen. That is also acceptable.